You're listening to Business Marketing Show, episode number 7. You can find us at businessmarketingshow.com or on iTunes. Hi everyone, this is Ed K. Smith from the Business Marketing Show with my co-host Brendan Tully, and today we are going to be talking about Google Adwords. Yes, Google Adwords. So strap yourself in. This should be a very interesting conversation that Brendan and I have, seeing it's one of our favourite subjects, and we'll hopefully impart some good information to you that you can use down the track with your Google AdWords campaign if you intend to do that. So welcome, Mr. Brendan.
Hello, Ed. Good morning. How are you?
I am very good.
I'm going to pull you up there. You just said something, if you intend to use AdWords. I think everybody should be using AdWords. 99% of businesses should at least test AdWords.
Yeah, at least test it. Yeah, it's not necessarily going to be for everyone, is it? But they'll find that out very quickly.
Yeah.
So history of Google AdWords, for those who are not aware of what Google AdWords is, and more and more people are aware these days, it is Google's paid search marketing system, or their paid advertising system. So their ads appear on Google when you do a search, usually at the top left-hand side and on the right-hand side of the search results page. And there's also their AdWords network, where ads are displayed across various websites that people choose to display Google ads on. So AdWords has been around since 2003, roughly, and our company started consulting with that back then. But it has changed rapidly and dramatically with all the different options and what you can do with it. And it was relatively simple back 11 years ago, even still back then, most people didn't know what they were doing and couldn't use it. So now it is a much more complicated beast, I would say. Would you agree, Brendan?
Absolutely. So we've talked about this before. So you're the AdWords guru. You've been doing it for 10 plus years. So we started doing AdWords, and we only do AdWords for certain types of clients. I won't touch really big campaigns because we'll get into that anyway. But we started doing it in 2009, 2010. We initially started off as an SEO company, and as you said, the search results are split into two: the paid search and the non-paid search results. And roughly split. In some cases, there's more paid results than the unpaid results now. So if you're not using AdWords, you're leaving money on the table. And also, I guess initially back in the day, AdWords was really pushed to businesses as a DIY platform. And I say in the workshops, and we've talked about this before, that it's absolutely no longer a DIY platform. If you're a business owner thinking about AdWords, there's absolutely no way you should be doing it yourself. For me, in my mind, there's two main reasons. One is there are so many knobs and dials and switches and settings. It's like flying a 747. So, and the other one is that AdWords, at its core level, is a numbers game. So it's a case of, and this is a problem I see, and I know you do as well, that business owners see AdWords and advertising and marketing as an expense. They see it as money going out of the business. But if it's actually working and it's doing its job and it's being effective, it's a case of put $1 out and get $2 back. And there's a lot of tweaking and testing you can do to make those numbers work better, particularly if you're on the borderline where you're putting out $1 and getting $1.10 back. If you work with an AdWords professional, they can help you get to that. Put $1 out, get $2 back, get $3 back, get $5 back. And we have in particular markets, we have, and I know you do too, we have customers who they're spending only a few $100s a month on AdWords, but because there's not much competition in their niche or their market, and there aren't any their competitors, or there's only a few of the competitors who are running AdWords, these guys are spending a few $100 and generating millions of dollars in business projects, contracts out of a tiny little spend. So
yeah, it's pretty amazing what a click, as in someone clicking on your ad, can actually bring you back in. It's really quite astounding. And look, if you're in a niche market, as Brendan was saying. It is a little bit easier to try and attract that business and that traffic through advertising and through AdWords in particular. If you're selling a commodity that 10,000 other people are trying to sell, then it's a bit of a harder task. And I think in a lot of cases, e-commerce is a little bit of a trickier game to play with AdWords compared to services and lead generation. And Brendan does a lot in the e-commerce side. So it takes, particularly when you've got thousands of units of products that you're selling, that's typically you'll have to have some type of ad set up for each of one of those and the specific keywords. So it can be a lot of work for e-commerce sites.
Yep, absolutely, totally agree. And it absolutely comes down to how much the revenue a single product or a sale generates, how much profit that generates, the cost to advertise, and how easy it is to sell people. So it's not just a case of running ads and you'll make money. You really need to be about the numbers on this. So if you've got a $20 product and you only sell 5 a month, then paying someone to do AdWords for you and paying $5 a click, those numbers just don't work. So it really comes down to whether the maths work. So typically for the clients who see the most success, they've got a high, whatever they sell is high revenue item. It's contracts or the customers have a high lifetime value. They'll come back a lot. Like we do a lot of work in the dental space. So if they get a patient, typically that patient stays with that dentist for years. So, it makes sense to maybe pay, it might cost them $50 or $100 in advertising spend to attract that customer. But once they have them, then they stick around for a long time.
Yeah, very true. And look, it is all about the return on the investment that you're putting in. And one of the things that I do when we're running our workshops here in Perth is, for those who are coming to the AdWords sections, I always say, who thinks spending $2,000 a month on AdWords is expensive? And, some people in the room, sometimes half the room, puts their hand up. And I say, now, if that $2,000 was making you $40,000, who still thinks that $2,000 is expensive? And then no one puts their hand up. So it's not about how much you spend, it's about what it returns. A lot of people have a very small mindset when it comes to what they are doing with their paid advertising. So you can't think of it as the amount you're spending. It has to be what it's returning.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and it's funny because I see people who, in the past, they may not necessarily be doing it anymore, but they spend $20,000, $30,000 a year on Yellow Pages, yet they cringe at spending a few $100s a month or $1,000 a month on an AdWords campaign. I don't know. It's really funny when people. It's definitely a mindset thing. People would see it as an expense, which is a problem. It shouldn't be about the expense, like you've said. And then they think that they're buying clicks, but they're not really buying clicks. What they're buying is demand. So if you think about marketing, so the way I explain marketing to our clients, and there's different tools. I use this in the context of the two sides to AdWords, like you've mentioned. There's the AdWords for search, which is all about the search results. And then there's the AdWords display network, which is more similar to, it's really banner ads, but that's not really a good way to explain it because there's a lot of negative connotations about banner ads. But the display network is probably more akin to more traditional print advertising. So the way I explain, when I explain sales and marketing to customers, marketing is like talking to a big, broad audience and getting them to get in touch with you, or getting to them to the sales part of the process, which is talking one-on-one to the customer. So we talk about, I explain it in marketing funnel and sales pipeline. And in the marketing funnel, you've really got 3 sort of stages. So you've got prospects who are not aware of your product. They're prospects who are aware of your product but don't have demand, or aware of your service or product, don't have demand, and then people who have active demand for your product or service. So you take those 3 stages of the marketing funnel. At the top stage, you've got to create awareness of your product, service, or whatever it is. In the middle stage, you've got to create demand or increase demand. And then at the bottom, your goal is to capture demand. So that's why AdWords works really well, because it captures them at the bottom of that marketing funnel where they already have active demand. So where that really comes into play is talking about keyword targeting. So a lot of people target really broad keywords, which, as we both know, that's not really the way to use AdWords. Would you agree?
Sorry, dude, you cut out for about that last 20 seconds of talking. I kept trying to say it, but you disappeared. So
Where did I get cut off?
you were talking about the funnel.
So, okay, so the funnel. So at the top of the funnel where the prospects have no awareness of your product or service, they have some sort of need or want, but they don't know about your product or service. So at the top of the funnel, your goal really should be to create awareness of your company, your product or service. In the middle of the funnel, they have some sort of awareness of your product or service, but they have no real active demand. So in the middle of the funnel, you want to create demand for what you're selling, or you want to increase demand. They might have a little bit of demand already. And then at the bottom of the funnel, they already have active demand. So your goal really there at the bottom is to capture demand. So that's where the AdWords for search really comes into play. And the real strength of it is being able to step into that demand stream, get attention and capture that demand for your business as opposed to competitors.
You mentioned dental. We don't have a lot of dental clients. I know you've got more in that space. We've got one client, and because it's getting up to mouthguard season, as they call it, so it's sports season. So there's lots of, well, this is in Australia. We're talking mainly a lot of football and things like that happening, and those types of games where high, heavy contact and getting punched in the face. Mouth guards, need to get made up, and they do custom mouth guards, this client of ours. And no sooner had I switched on this ad campaign, we'd set up a landing page for mouth guards on their website, set up the ad campaign, put in the relevant keyword terms, and within the next probably 3 or 4 hours, they had a lead booking in for mouth guards on the Saturday. So it was like, and off it goes. So like it's pretty instant if you can get it sorted properly. And as you would agree, SEO is a longer term prospect.
Yep, for sure.
Whereas AdWords, if you get it all set up and ready to go, as soon as you flick that switch, you can potentially be getting leads or sales, whatever it is you're trying to do.
Yeah, within 24 hours easily, even within a few hours if the ads get approved quickly.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a pretty amazing tool when you consider that there was really nothing like that available in years gone by. It's only really since we've had access to the internet. Before it was yellow pages. You'd create an ad, big or small, and you'd be stuck with that ad for a year, and that was it.
Yep. That used to work. Like I love saying yellow pages is dead, but in the
past,
did
work, of course.
Yeah, because that
still does.
That's where the demand was. That was the bulk of the demand was in a yellow pages book. If you wanted to find a plumber, you open the yellow pages and find one. But that was 15 years ago. And, everybody has a smartphone now. Both my parents have a smartphone. Everyone in my family has an iPhone. So people want something. They're looking for a plumber or whatever it is. The first thing they're going to do is open their phone and jump on Google. So the demand has switched from yellow pages to Google. That's not necessarily the case for all markets. There are some markets that are less tech savvy, or if you're dealing with a much older demographic who don't necessarily are comfortable with computers or whatever it is. But
yep.
In probably at least 80 or 90% of cases, Google is going to be where you want to start advertising first, I'd suggest. Yeah,
definitely where. One of the things I said a couple of days ago in the workshop was don't discount the Bing paid advertising system as well. So Microsoft has a search channel platform called Bing, and now it's only a minute market. And I'll start again. A minute place in the marketplace, so that's even worse. So they have, I think, about between 10-15% of the search market.
Yeah.
So,
and it can also work pretty well because typically, and this is stereotyping, but typically a Bing search user, Microsoft search user is less tech savvy because in a lot of cases they're using Bing search because they're using Internet Explorer and haven't changed the default search option. So
correct.
In some cases, that type of prospect or that type of traffic can convert better, or you can get more inquiries from the same number of visits on Bing versus Google.
Yeah, and I had this with someone not too long ago where I was getting them to look at a certain search term on Google and see what the search results were showing to them, and they were seeing something completely different to what I was seeing. And I said, "You're on Google, right?" "Yes." what does it say at the top of the web page? Bing.com.au. Okay, well, that isn't Google, that's Bing. But it's as I said, it's preloaded with their computers when they buy it, and they don't know how to change it. So don't discount Bing. Do some testing and get your strategies and your ads working well on Google, and then you can just roll that out across onto Bing, and you'll typically get similar, if not sometimes cheaper results in terms of cost per clicks and stuff. So don't discount Bing at all. But yeah, so cost per click is what we refer to this type of system, or pay per click. So it refers to any time you set up an ad in the search system on Google AdWords campaigns. It's all based around a keyword term. And every keyword term in every marketplace has a different value attached to it based on the competition and what they're prepared to pay to have that search term so that they appear higher up on the results.
So an auction system, right?
Very basically, it is an auction system. So in one marketplace, a keyword term could be 10 cents a click. In another marketplace, it could be $50 a click. So that is determined by the marketplace. Now, typically, you will find that the product and service governs the limit of how high the cost of the click goes to. So it's very unlikely someone who's selling a $5 product is going to pay $5 a click for that product, because even if they got 100% conversion of every customer they had click on the ad, they're still not going to make any money. So it's definitely a case of it's being driven by the marketplace. And there are some people who pay what I call stupid tax, and they don't know what they're doing, and they pay too much for their clicks, or just automatically assume being number one on the paid advertising is just like being number one on the natural organic search, which it is not, because every time someone clicks on it, it's costing you money. So being number one may not necessarily be the best place for you when you're starting a campaign. You may want to sort of look further down. Position 3, position 4 may be a better spot for you.
Yep.
Have you found that?
Yeah, so when we run campaigns for clients, we typically try and keep them in the average position 1.5. So that's generally a mix of being position 1 and position 2. So, yeah, that's kind of what we aim for. But there's just talking about position in the AdWords search results as well. We hear it in the workshops a lot, right? We hear people saying, I don't click on the ads. Nobody clicks on the ads, right?
Yeah.
But what people don't realise, and a lot of people don't take into account, is that yes, people do click on the ads for starters, but on different devices, the search results look different. So we'll include a screenshot in the show notes, but particularly on smartphones, usually if it's a competitive search term, all of the results that display above the fold, which is the bit that shows before you have to scroll, all of the results are the paid search results. And on top of that, Google is changing the search results all the time, so it's harder to tell which ones are ads and which ones aren't. So yeah, I'd argue that it's getting even more important to be running AdWords, and that sort of argument that nobody clicks on the ads is not correct thinking. Bad assumption.
Bad assumption, and based on an individual's personal usage. And I always say to people, remove yourself and what you think from this equation. Just because you don't click on it, and just because you've asked maybe 2 other people, like your brother, your mother, your father, your co-worker, do they click on the ads, and they say no, that is not a good pool of information to bring your data from. So, the fact is, every single day, Google is making $100+ million from their paid advertising system. So unless there's just one very, very rich person out there clicking on one ad every day and spending $100 million, there's an absolute heap of people clicking on ads. So and the fact is, I look across all my customers and we have tens and tens of thousands of people clicking on ads on a daily basis. So, it's a lot of rubbish. Your different marketplaces have different volumes of traffic, and there will always be different percentages of people who will click on paid ads as opposed to the natural organic stuff. But it's certainly something you have to test and find out for yourself.
Yeah. In most of our markets, we see the split. I guess the split between people who click on the ads and click on the free search results can range from anywhere from like 3%. In some cases, it's as high as 20%, 25%. So, yeah, absolutely, they do get clicked on. Let's talk about keyword targeting for a minute,
Yes.
and being precise and capturing demand. So important when you're using AdWords is to be very precise about capturing demand. So it's very important. So I talk about a concept in the workshops. You have your website purpose, the goal of the website, whether that's to sell people accommodation or get dental clients or sell something online or get phone calls for people who want a plumber. That's your website purpose, and you're going to have a few different reasons why you have a website and why the website actually exists. So I say that the better the match between your website purpose and the searcher intent, the better that match is, the more likely it is that you're going to get the sale or get the inquiry or whatever it is. So there's two parts to that. One is being very clear about your website purpose and making sure that the website reflects that. So if the purpose of your website is to get people to book accommodation, then your website needs to be built as best as possible around that purpose. And the second part of that is the keyword targeting. So the more accurate and precise your keyword targeting is, the better you can focus, or the better you can gauge searcher intent or customer intent and get that match. So that's the second part. A lot of people do AdWords and they advertise against very broad terms, or they want to advertise against very broad terms. Like, for example, I do a lot with small accommodation providers, and they want to target very broad terms. Like in Western Australia, for example, the Southwest region is called the Southwest. So I've had some customers who want to advertise against accommodation Southwest, which is a terrible search term to advertise against, because there's 20 or 50 or whatever number of towns, and that just doesn't make sense because that person doesn't have very strong intent. Whereas, for example, Margaret River is one of the towns in the Southwest. Advertising against accommodation Margaret River, you can pretty much gauge that the intent of that searcher is to find accommodation in Margaret River. So if you're a Margaret River hotel, your purpose is to get people to book accommodation in Margaret River. So that's a very good match between the search intent and the purpose of your website. So you're more likely going to get that booking. Does that make sense? Am I rambling?
No, you're absolutely spot on, buddy. Of course you are not rambling. It's very, very true that you need to have that set up correctly and not just have what most people do when I'm working with new clients who have already been testing AdWords, and typically they say, we've been using AdWords, we're not getting any results, or it's not working, or whatever the scenario is. And I say, well, let me have a look at your account and see what you've been doing. 9 times out of 10, they've made all the rookie mistakes because they haven't spent any time educating themselves on how to use it and just sort of randomly start setting things up. But one of the big mistakes that most people make is within AdWords, we have, if you're breaking it down from the larger chunk to the smaller chunks, we have campaigns. So that campaign is typically targeted around a particular place, like we could be targeting Australia. And then within that campaign, you can have ad groups that target specific products or services that are very different and are different keyword terms. Most people will go and do some keyword research. They'll pull down a whole stack of data with tens of thousands of keywords in them, sometimes what I've seen, all different types of keywords, put them into one ad that is not very targeted, not very specific, and then wonder why that is not producing any results. So in Brendan's case, you would actually do your keyword research, find keyword terms based around accommodation Margaret River, anything associated with that, but still keeping it very close. And then you would write an ad and create an ad group based around those that are only targeting Margaret River, not Pemberton, which is another place, not Albany. They all have to be specific. Because the advantage with AdWords is when you create these ads and people click on them, you send them directly to the point that you want them to go to within your website. So that specific page about Margaret River. So you don't send them to your homepage and then leave them to try and find their way around and find the Margaret River page. We have the capability, and always have with AdWords, to send them directly to that specific page. So it absolutely pays off. The more targeted and specific you are, the better your results will be.
Yep. Also important, so you can show ads for particular keywords. AdWords has negative keywords as well, so you can specify what keywords you don't want your ads to show for. So in that example, accommodation Margaret River, if you're a hotel, and typically hotels don't like people having pets at the hotel, if someone's searching pet-friendly accommodation, Margaret River, you don't want to show up for that search term. So there's the keyword list where you're targeting your ads at, and then there's the negative keyword list, which is the list of keywords that you don't want to show the ads for. So in that case, and we do this a lot for the accommodation people, we have pet-friendly in the negative keyword list so the ads don't show.
Yeah, absolutely. And that will save you money because you're not going to get wasted clicks happening for people who would never end up being a customer of yours or a client because you're sending them to something that is not useful to them. So the trouble is with most people setting up an AdWords campaign, they want to take shortcuts. They don't want to invest the time and energy it takes to get it right. And therefore they end up just paying a lot more money for their traffic, and they don't get the same conversions. And that's when they start saying AdWords doesn't work, or the conversion is not as good as something else. But when you deeply analyze it, you really get to see that it's because they didn't do the groundwork. It's a bit like hopping in a car and saying, let's drive to Sydney. And you don't have GPS, you don't have a map book, you just randomly start driving from wherever you're leaving from, and well, hopefully we'll get to Sydney. Yep. You may be driving in the complete opposite direction. So you need to have some sort of plan and strategy and know your marketplace. And that comes back to all the stuff we talk about, Brendan, doesn't it? About knowing your target market, knowing what it is they're looking for, trying to understand their behaviours, and not just thinking from your point of view. You have to think from the customer's point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, AdWords isn't a magic bullet. So like we mentioned before, there's two parts to getting a customer. There's the marketing bit and the sales bit. The AdWords is the marketing bit. That's only going to get you so far as, in most cases, let's take e-commerce websites out of it. But, if the AdWords marketing, AdWords ads work well, that gets you to the point where someone sends you an email or picks up the phone and calls you. That doesn't help you on the sales side of things. So if your sales process is bad or there's some other problem, further down the line, then no matter how much you spend on AdWords, it's not going to fix that other problem. Like I've talked to you before and in the workshops, we do about a classic case where I had a customer who did roof antennas and we did some SEO. So, it's a similar sort of case here where we did SEO, got him ranked fairly high and he was getting phone calls. So the marketing part was working well. But the guy was standing on a roof all day long and I called him one time because he called me and he's like, okay, I'm getting these phone calls, but I'm not getting any sales. I'm like, okay. I called him, and the guy's standing on the roof. I can barely hear him. It's it's blowing a gale up there, and it's just a terrible sales experience. So the other part is, no matter how much you spend on AdWords, if you have a sales problem or the phone calls are going to a receptionist who really doesn't care, or she comes off as having a bad attitude, or there's some other problem somewhere else, then no matter how much tweaking you do, how good your AdWords are, then you're still not going to get the ultimate goal of getting the customer or the booking or the sale or whatever it is.
Absolutely. And do you know what? With all the clients we work for, that is the biggest problem. Mm-hmm. The marketing side, getting the traffic, being targeted, that is not the problem. The problem typically is they have something that lets them down on the other side of the equation. And it's not, it's staff not trained properly. They don't have proper systems in place to deal with the leads. Because, often the situation is they're not getting a lot of traffic or a lot of inquiries. So we want to get more, we want to get more, we want to get more. And then you switch on that tap or switch on the AdWords campaign and all of a sudden they're going, oh my God. And they don't have the systems to deal with the increased level of inquiry. And then it all just starts falling off the other end of the conveyor belt. So you've got to have your systems set up and have a proper place where you can take calls, whether you outsource that to a call center. That typically that's not the best scenario, but having someone that's going to take the calls that isn't on top of a roof with a gale blowing would be a much better service and sales experience.
Yeah, for sure. What else do we? The other thing is that a lot of people think that they're going to end up with massive charges on their credit card bill. In AdWords, you set a daily budget, so you just tell Google how much you want to spend per day, and when you hit that budget limit, the ads stop running. So, for a small business, that could be as low as $10 or $20 a day, but it really depends on how much the cost per click is in your marketplace. If the cost per click is $5,
$20,
whatever it is, and you've got a $20 a day budget, that's not going to work so well. So,
yeah. Realism has to come into the whole process, and that's why doing your keyword research is paramount, because you can actually, you get told using the Google Keyword Planner tool, you get a rough idea what it's going to cost you to be in that top 1 to 3 spots on the paid search results. So, if you're saying, look, I can only spend $10, and as Brendan said, it's costing you $5 a click, you get 2 clicks. Now, based on the average web conversion rate of 3%, you probably wouldn't even get a sale or an inquiry out of that, let alone get your money back. So you have to be realistic with what you're going into, and don't expect these massive results from very little input.
Yep.
So
it really is a case of testing, right? So it's about knowing it, being like, it's not going to make a bad business good overnight. So I guess that's number one. If your business is in a bad place and you're really struggling, AdWords is not going to be a magic bullet that's going to turn things around instantly. It really is a numbers game, so you really have to know the numbers and understand them. And initially, there's going to be some testing involved, and you might break even or lose a bit of money at the start while you're testing it out. But if the numbers look like they're going to work initially on paper, then with some tweaking and testing and a little bit of work, they probably will work in terms of put $1 in, get $2 back.
Yeah.
And also, it's important, like we've talked about, we can get as much traffic as we like out of AdWords, but if the sales process is broken, or if you have a crappy website that doesn't work, or it's just out of date, or doesn't really sell the visitor on what you do, then it's really just not going to work for you. So really kind of key points to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, as you say, they're never going to know if you're not using AdWords. It's probably a good time to go and experiment and start using it. But do some research and some study before you just randomly go into using the campaigns.
Yeah.
There's lots of good support material from Google themselves, some good videos, good training workshops and courses and stuff online that you can get access to. You can go and buy a book on Amazon or somewhere. I would recommend one from a good friend of mine, Perry Marshall, who wrote The Ultimate Guide to Google AdWords, which is about $15, I think, on Kindle, or $20 or something to get it, the printed version. And that goes through a lot more of the psychology, not just the how to use the interface of AdWords or things like that. It's actually around the whole psychology of what you're doing with your marketing and how to get people to click on your ad as opposed to clicking on your competitors' ads, and being clever. But it's a big book. It's 370 pages long, I think. So a lot of people go, oh, no, I don't want to read that. I'd rather just go and make stupid mistakes and spend thousands of dollars and then go, oh, maybe I should have learned something. So seriously, it's not a thing to be trifled with when it comes to getting it set up properly. You will lose money if you don't do it properly. There's absolutely no two ways about it.
Yep.
But preparation is the key.
Yep.
So, on that note, we have been gibbering on for the last 30 minutes or so, Brendan.
Bit of a fireside chat, I think.
Imparted some. Yeah, I think with AdWords is, typically I've run 2-day workshops in the past where we really break things down and get into the nitty-gritty. And that's always something we are open to doing again in the future. But it's a case of making sure that if you're going to go down that path and do Google AdWords, you have to have someone in your office doing it, or you doing it, or you outsource it to someone. They're the only options. But it will certainly be of benefit to test it at least.
Yep. For sure.
All right, my friend.
Cool, mate.
If anyone has any questions regarding AdWords, feel free to drop us a question below in the contact form of the show notes there. We will certainly do what we can. And
you have a keyword research service, right, as well, that people can pay you to do some analysis, and you can tell them whether AdWords is actually going to work and give them some keywords and some rough numbers, right?
Correct, yes. We do that. We have a flat fee of $697, including GST if you're in Australia, and we do that keyword research for you and then present you with your options on what you need to do and what it's going to cost, etc. So that's certainly something we can help you with. Or
if you're in Perth, you just did an AdWords workshop this week. In fact, we can put a link up to our Perth workshops as well.
Yes, and I think there will be some more of some type happening in the near future, but certainly we'll give people the links to that.
Cool.
Thank you, Brendan.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks for your time as usual. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll speak to you all on the next episode. You've been listening to Business Marketing Show. You can find us at businessmarketingshow.com or on iTunes. Just look for Business Marketing Show.